one of the things that, is awesome about having Bryce and Domino's here is it's a brand that has truly adapted, right? And not died. Over the many course of years, Domino's has constantly leveraged tech for efficiency, but not just efficiency, also delivering amazing customer experiences and customer engagement. So they're constantly at top of mind and using tech as a way to do that. So with that, excited to introduce Bryce, VP of Decisioning Science. And Bryce, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Bryce Macher. I am the VP of Decision Science at Domino's. And what that means is that any place where the business or a consumer makes a decision, hopefully together, uh, I had purview over that space. So we've aligned all of our, think about everything you have into understanding your consumers, our consumer research, our consumer analytics, our consumer data scientists, and even our consumer facing AI is now all aligned into one engine for thinking about how consumers make decisions in a way that both delight them and advantage us from a business perspective.
Great, and I'm sure we'll dig into that. So I have a question I want to ask. There's a lot of AI hype. Everyone thinks AI is going to take over everything and humans no longer are needed, right? So
Right.
with that, I want to ask, what's the biggest myth about AI that you want to address?
When we were prepping for this conversation, my hot take was that doing ROI is just a waste of time. And since we said that maybe a month ago and prepping, you're starting to hear it a lot from places. Section is saying it. Over there, Greg Shove is really kind of pushing this idea of like let's think about this from the perspective of it's just foundational. It's like going out and saying, hey, folks, you need to tell us what the ROI on your teams having laptops and Wi-Fi are. Like nobody's asking that question, right? And it's becoming that kind of commoditized tool that we have to let that go. I think from a marketing perspective, there's an extension to that I would add, and it's that when you start with the ROI conversation, you actually start optimizing for the wrong thing. You start optimizing in a way that's transactional. And I know we'll talk about this in a moment in terms of how Domino's uses AI, but it makes it so that you stop pushing for the magical and the connective and really start thinking about like, well, how do I turn this money in into that money out? And if business were that easy, we'd all be solo entrepreneurs.
And we'd be at home not working and AI would do it for us. But I'm sure with that statement, no worry about ROI on AI. A lot of people probably perked up and eyebrows raised up and like, oh, what does this mean? So with saying that, right, Domino's has always been a first mover in the QSR space. You guys have always taken tech by the horns and used it to do whatever you wanted to do. But at the same time, you're an amazing pizza shop too, and you rebranded your formula to make amazing crusts. I love your crusts. Definitely better than Pizza Hut now. And at the same time, I want to understand like this name, Decisioning Science. Like it's clearly a new team name, as we were talking in the prep call that you mentioned you guys have come up with. And I want to know like why the change and like what went into it. What was the thinking behind it?
So, to your theme of adapt or die and focusing on engagement, for us, historically, like a lot of places, engagement meant transactions. Like how do we drive more pizza transactions, more moments? And for us, thinking about decision science was a little bit of a pivot to stop thinking about transactions and conversion purely. They're still very important to us and to our franchisees, but really thinking about how do we find our place in people's decisions. So how do we expand, pizza occasions, which we would talk about by thinking about the decisions people make when they get to a pizza occasion? And how does that affect our decisions as a business in a way that is measurable, repeatable, and advantaged for what kind of creative stories we tell, how we talk to our customers when we talk to those customers? That's really the idea behind our switch to decisioning science. And I think the other piece of it is, you know, just like we were talking about with ROI, is stepping back and thinking about those magical pizza experiences. How do we set people up for those magical pizza experiences? So requiring to build a team that speaks both the language of the consumer in terms of magic and delicious, but also speaks the language of math in terms of, we equally spend as much time talking about stochastic optimization in conditions of uncertainty and, horizontal scaling with load balancing. Like we're speaking these three languages of the consumer, the mathematics, and the technology. And we need to make sure that we have an organization with a North Star, the decision to guide how we have those conversations, so we just don't have those conversations for the fun of talking about math, technology.
But there's actual North Star you're driving to. And that's where it sounds like decision making now has become a central way that you view your end user.
Yeah.
And the entire business needs to drive towards that. And that's what's interesting is Domino is, it's not just the tech side, it's not just the pizza side, you're putting the customer at the center. of everything you're doing and the decision that they have to make or not have to make.
Correct.
And so when you think about that, how does AI fit into this philosophically? Because you're talking about magical moments, you're talking about humans, but then you're talking about AI decisioning science that plays a part into it. So that's kind of like, what is going on here? Like yin and a yang. Like, how are you guys thinking about that?
Yeah, for us, it's not AI first decisioning or technology first decisioning. It's consumer first decisioning, and finding those places where we can plug in AI and think about how do we drive magical experiences. How, for us internally, our North Star that we talk about as an internal organization across all of the marketing and consumer facing organizations is we're trying to build, you know, magical pizza experiences that people can count on and that they crave. And so for us, that's what drives our North Star. It's the decisions to be part of those magical pizza experiences. How do we set up magical pizza experiences? How do we set up occasions for magical pizza experiences? So, everybody went through a phase where they're like, we're a technology company that serves pizza, or we're a hotel company or a technology company that has hotels. And for us, increasingly where we've seen our success and where we continue to drive is like, we're a pizza company that provides magic.
Yeah.
And it's, how do you do that? Well, you creatively use technologies and you think about the whole spectrum of what goes into a decision and figure out where are those places that you can measurably intervene, but still not lose track of the magic. So personalization is a thing we've done for a long time. We've talked through as a team the combinatorial mathematics behind the number of pizzas you can build since 1980, and it gets into the billions when you think about just the U.S. and then you add globally, and the number just explodes, right? And this is the hot debate on the team when we're at happy hour and none of the business folks are around. But we've done personalization since we were founded as a brand.
Yeah.
And the benefit of that is you can talk the language of people where they are. All of our Dominoes are franchises. They are in many ways small businesses, local businesses. A vast majority are local. And so, on the one hand, you can do personalization in a way that just removes all the magic of the brand. It's like your Domino's pizza at your time and your way, and you kind of lose something where it just feels like a transactional pizza. And there's also the other side where you do no personalization and it just feels like a big box brand spread across the country. And so for us, part of this magic in personalization is figuring out where's that right place mathematically,
Including paving roads.
including
That
paving
was one
roads.
of the examples you gave in our prep.
Yeah. So when we were talking about magic first in our history of success, it's things like paving for pizza, where we went and we filled potholes in small towns because we're part of your town. And was that driven by like conversion and things like that? Yeah, that was part of the thought behind it, but it was also about being a part of community and driving magic. You've got emergency pizza where we say, hey, look, during this time of year, starting, the end of the year into the beginning of the year, we have a lot of holidays, a lot of people have different group gatherings, and you are inevitably going to burn something. Call us. We're going to give you a free pizza to help you out with that. Are you at the beach? Hey, why don't you use Pinpoint Delivery so that we can find you and get you a pizza where you are rather than you having to go try and negotiate things.
So by the bathroom, I'm over here, pizza man.
Yeah, exactly. And so you can see how AI plays into all of that, but it's not the star of the show. It's what unlocks the magic.
And that's exactly it, right? Your ultimate goal, as you said, is deliver magical moments in people's lives. And that's great. But going back to the other side of it is, what are the metrics you're using to measure these magical moments? How are you thinking about them? Because as much as we don't want to talk about ROI,
Right.
you still got to think about the metrics regardless of it.
Yeah, and this is always the challenge, right? And is sometimes you build a metric and you realize that it's not actually a metric. So we've gone through a lot of iterations. We have your classic ones, right? CAC, you've got CVR, you've got all those moments. But there's an element of this, and why we bring together that first zero-party research team is also understand and maybe not quantify in the most precise way, but to measure the magic. And for us as a brand, those metrics are very, very important, right? Because we do have to drive revenue so that we can continue to provide our franchisees with amazing campaigns that drive their profitability. But we also have to think about like, when are we not driving the right type of magic, right? And so for us, it's monitoring all of those, what I would call hard KPIs, your CACs, your value, your conversion rates, your dollars, your margin. And then we also have a range of what we would like to call squishy KPIs, which are things like magic and love. And if both of those don't gel, then we also have hard conversations about, how do we step back from or let a campaign start to live out the end of its life.
So I'm going to pause you there because this is probably what a lot of people are thinking of or want to know. How do you know when it's time to kill something? How do you know it's time to not let it adapt, but rather die?
It's a great question that Siri, it sounds like, is going to help me out with over there. Um, there's no standardized answer. Sorry, Siri. Every campaign, we all know this, like every campaign from a traditional marketing perspective, you have an ad stock effect and you're like, okay, I'm going to watch when this gets to saturation and then can pull off. But we're starting to learn that in this world of AI, the way the landscape's changing, there's no way to consistently say like, hey, this is how rapidly this will decay, or this is how long it'll take for this to naturally leave the marketplace. And so it's really different on every campaign. Is it something that people just don't love right now? Okay, well, let's let it slowly live its life and see if it catches wind again. Is it something that people are saying, hey, we actually hate this and I don't feel the magic right now? Okay, then how do we have conversations about turning off and pivoting away? But it all comes back to that strategy of making sure you're aligning both your hard KPIs with those squishy KPIs. Because if you ignore the squishy KPIs, you actually ignore the strategic side of things where you're, maybe just a little too early to market.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we've all experienced that where we've definitely have been too early to market. I have, at least in my marketing career, and kind of put something on pause and come back to like 6 months later, it works like gangbusters. And it's because maybe you noticed one or two things that you just had to fine tune that actually got the people's attention.
Yeah.
So, but I think the bigger thing you're pointing out to, which I think everyone in the room hopefully agrees with, is yes, AI is here, but humans are going nowhere. It's not going to fully replace us. We as marketers still have a role to play in all of this. So with that, I want to say is we're almost at the end here. Is like, what's one piece of advice that you'd have, since we're on the theme of adapt or die, for the folks in the room here?
I would say it's a hard piece of advice and it's double-sided. It's don't chase the trends, but also don't lose foresight into what's changing. So it's really a tightrope to walk. The example I give is everybody has a chat bot now that's hurtling you towards conversion as fast as its little legs can carry you. And as more and more places have that, and as more and more workplaces say, hey, here's Copilot, here's Gemini, here's whatever tool for you to chat with and do your job faster, we're going to start to have a lot of fatigue with those agents. Does that mean abandon your chat agents or whatever else is out there? No. But it means that you can't just build the conversion agent. You've got to figure out a way to bring joy to the consumer. And I think that's what you ultimately need to think about from a strategic perspective, is not just like the transactional, where we started, right? ROI is purely a transactional metric. And you build a next best action machine, and the goal of the next best action is to lead to the next best action, reward chaining, et cetera, all of the math. But none of us ever stopped and sat back and said, okay, what if the next best action is making someone smile? And how can we use AI to get that moment? And what's the value of that moment after we get it? I think that's the piece of advice I would give folks is don't chase the trends, but also don't lose the foresight that'll put you square in the trend center magic area.
So basically, adapt and do it while walking a fine line.
Right.
There we go. Well, thank you. Appreciate the time, Bryce. Thank you for coming out here, flying out here, give us your time.